Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
Texas is far away from Florida, but it's not too far. And what happens in Texas probably happens in Florida when it comes to nature. We have some beautiful nature in the Everglades and in the center part of the state. But what I'm going to share with our listeners is something extraordinary, and it's really in dedication, I would say, to John and Audrey Martin, who are such nature lovers, but they're people lovers too. They're very kind, good people, and they like to see things happen, especially John. And I feel so privileged to be able to have you on our show, John, and to talk about something that's called Camp Lula Sam's. Why don't you just start off and explain what this all is?
Well, it was a love story. It probably deserves a movie. Two sisters who lived in Wyoming and were going to college in the late 1940s decided to go to Fort Lauderdale for spring break. And two young men from Brownsville, Texas, who were in college, decided to go to the same place. And they met. And they married these two ladies. They moved them to Brownsville, Texas. And so Mom and Dad, who were in Wyoming, Lula and Earl Sams, Earl was the founder of J.C. Penney's. And so they moved to Brownsville also. And Lula Sam's had an affinity for the Girl Scouts. And so they bought 250 acres, and she carved out 85.7 acres and built camping areas and built a lodge for where 200 young ladies could get together. And she dedicated it to the Girl Scouts of the Lower Rio Grande Valley. And they camped there for 40 years. And then the Girl Scouts in the late 1970s decided that they really needed to sell it. And I learned about it, and I called two friends of mine in Brownsville, and I said, this is the last habitat of its type. You've got to buy it. Well, they brought in a third investor, and they bought it to protect it. And they owned it and ran kids' camps through all the schools for about 20 years. The third partner decided he really needed to send his girls to college and said he had to sell. So the two owners called me and said, John, can you help us get this protected? And so the last 3 years have been working diligently and creating photography tournaments to try and show why it needed to be protected, and trying to pull together a team and a partnership that could make this thing not just be bought, but put a conservation easement on it that would protect it into perpetuity. And the Valley Land Fund, which is a land trust, came together with my organization, Images for Conservation Fund, and we began working with a charter public schools called IDEA Public Schools. And we negotiated. They wanted it because in 2000, when they were formed, their founder used to take the kids camping to Benson State Park. And he saw the real benefits of getting kids outdoors. And he wanted a retreat center, and he wanted an area for that purpose. And the holdup was we had to get a conservation easement on it so that it would be protected into perpetuity. Well, on June 29th of this year, IDEA Public Schools wrote a check, bought the camp, and immediately put a conservation easement on it that would protect it. And so what started as a love story ended as a love story.
Right. Well, of course, I have the privilege of sitting here and looking at the book that you designed, and you put in all the beautiful photography. And this book, I have to assume, is for sale, or is it? Who buys this book?
We have a couple of hundred copies that are for sale and are phenomenal. They're $20 each, and they're available on our website.
Okay. Well, we're going to give some information out, but it's quite a story. I mean, looking through the pictures, each picture is so gorgeous, and people should know you don't just go somewhere and snap a picture. It takes hours of finding just the right scene and just the right light, and so that's what's happened here. And I did meet your very special photographer when you came down here for a little get-together, and I guess his name is Yaganski. What is his first name?
Bill Gazansky,
right.
And he is a Florida photographer who leads workshops to Costa Rica, Namibia, other parts of Africa, and to Texas.
That must be fun. I mean, he's a photographer, but he also seems to love the land and the animals and whatever he takes pictures of.
I think that's whether you have it to start with or whether you have it, you get it. I've known literally thousands of photographers now, and they all understand and love the land and wildlife.
I guess it comes through. Let me just tell everybody, John Martin is founder of Martin Refuge in Edinburg, Texas. And what we're talking about, the Martin Refuge, is 300 acres of thick South Texas brush located northwest of Mission, and is the original home of private nature photography in the Lower Rio Grande Valley. It's actually owned by John and Audrey Martin, who were the force behind the Valley Land Fun Photo Contest and the Images for Conservation Fund. The ranch has been hosting Happy Photographers since 2003. So if you want to see what they've been doing, let me give you their website. It's martinrefuge.com. martinrefuge.com. Now, that's different from Camp Lula Sam's, correct?
That is different. It's about 60 miles difference in location. And by the way, we just had 8 photographers there this morning who were photographing one of the truly great raptor shoots. In a couple of hours this morning, they saw 40 or 50 crested caracaras, Harris hawks, sharp-shinned hawks, black vultures, turkey vultures, roadrunners, and green jays.
That's you see, and people who don't understand this, they just say it's like they go to the Grand Canyon and say, "Oh, well, it's just a big hole," right?
Right.
But you see it so differently.
Nature is truly phenomenal, and what I told the group this morning was that I spent my life as an investment broker, and I see that people react to positive incentives versus heavy-handed regulations. And economics is the best incentive there is. And so I believe that nature photography on private land will save millions of acres of habitat over the next 25 or 30 years as more people realize that they can have better photography on private land than they can out in the crowded parks and refuges that are owned by the state and the federal government. Those are great places to learn, but if you want to have a place all to yourself and have it for your day or as many days as you want, a piece of private land that's set up for photography is the best place to go.
Now, I'm curious, John, are you a photographer?
I take snapshots. I have camera equipment, but I learned early on that I would compare my images to some really great photographers that I know, and there's an art. There's an ability to use the right light at the right time in the right setting with the right backgrounds and with your camera set at the right settings. And I just didn't have that unique ability. But what I learned is that over time I've learned that my art is with my mouth. And the Wildlife Photo Contest, of the Valley Land Fund, the Pro Tour of Nature Photography, I've been able to cause a lot of conservation and a lot of photographs, truly artful photographs, to be taken, and I didn't have to take them and process them.
Right. Well, certainly the photographers love you, and they love the fact that you support them in every way you can, because you talk to people who, let's say, do have a philanthropic heart. They want to do things, they have the money, but they need to have someone who can talk the talk and have the dream so that they can see it. Not everybody could look at this property at Camp Lula Sam's and really see what you saw. And the thing that affected me is when Audrey was telling me about the charter school, and that so many children maybe are having trouble in school, but they get out into the wilds like this, and maybe life changes for them in their mind.
That there is a story. There was a young man. We held a workshop through the National Recreation Foundation gave us a grant for kids workshops, and we created a educational photography workshop out at both at Camp Lula Sam's and at a ranch. And at this one ranch, we were working with 4-H Club, and the mother registered her son, who was 12 years old, but she didn't tell him because he's a very reticent kid. He hangs out by himself. He's a nice kid. He's just not outgoing and not willing to try things. And so she didn't tell him until they were about 5 miles of the 30-mile drive to the ranch. And he came unglued. He had never had a camera in his life. He was scared to death. And he was saying, "You should have asked me. You shouldn't have registered me. I hate you. I want to resign from this family. This is not right."
Oh.
So, but she got him calmed down by the time he arrived. And he went through the day. He learned about his camera. He took some images. The end of the day, that night, she didn't say anything, and he didn't say anything. So she asked him right before he went to bed, she said, "Well, how was today?" And he said, "It was okay." So the next morning, you have to be there at the ranch at 6 o'clock in the morning, and it's a 40-minute drive out. So they were having to leave really early, but she said, "You've got time for some breakfast. You want to take a moment and have some breakfast?" His answer was, "No, Mom, I don't want to be late."
Oh, boy.
And by the end of the time frame, the 3 days, he had come into his own. He had taken some great photographs. And his entire attitude towards life had changed.
Well, I bet you can multiply that many times.
Yes. It happens all the time. Getting a camera in a kid's hand, especially if he's a troubled kid, you will see a complete change in that child's life if you can get him outdoors and teach him how to photograph and let him take some great images.
So let me go back to this. So it's more than just taking someone on a nature walk. It's actually having a camera so that they can then see it and then see it later and then focus in on it. Is that the difference?
in a nature walk, and especially with kids, I believe, but I see it in adults, you walk and you look, but you don't see. When you have a camera, you're forced to stop, take time, watch the critter that you're photographing, or the flower or the bug. You're forced to take the time to really observe and see that setting in nature more than just a walk in the woods.
So, where did you grow up that all this is really in your soul? I know you were in the financial business, but where did you grow up?
I grew up between Houston and Galveston, and it was a really rural area. It was a town of like 3,200, and our house backed up to, it was a small, brand new little subdivision that backed up to probably 1 million acres of wilderness. And it was all privately owned ranches, and I just had the run of all of it. And I didn't do very well in school because I was too busy outdoors. And I would hit the front door, and my books would land on my bed, and I'd be out the back door and into the woods virtually every single day.
So now let's move fast forward, but you did wind up being in the financial world, so you gave up a lot of this for a while.
Well, what I found was that when I started as an investment broker, my boss told me that you have to work 18-hour days, you have to learn to play golf, and you have to join the country club. Well, I had a client who was going to teach me golf, and I found that I was probably the worst golfer that ever picked up a club, and obviously the most frustrated one. And so I decided not to spend my life being frustrated at a little ball and some clubs, and I spent my time in conservation, which still allowed me to be around people who had the money to be into conservation in a serious way.
Well, thinking about what you just said, there are so many places, and I can only use the Everglades, that are so special, and we have to be very careful that we don't give that land, that we protect the land and keep it as it's been, because I think it's one of our best natural resources. Well,
and it's proven that even housing subdivisions that are near green space have higher values than those that are just in a bunch of houses. And we toured an area north of Waco. It was a huge 2,500 acre subdivision on it with a golf course. The most expensive houses were those, and lots were on the golf course. The second most expensive and most in demand, because there were more of them, were those that backed up to wilderness, to trees and shrubs and wildness. People we've always lived with green and with wilderness, and we don't realize till we pave it over that we're missing something from our lives.
That's true. You say it so well, and I was thinking about these kids, the charter school. Are there other charter schools like this? This seems it's extraordinary.
This is extraordinary. This young man, they have just registered. In 2000, they had 157 kids and 2 portable buildings. This September, they registered 21,000 kids, and there is a waiting list of 18,000 kids.
Oh, my heavens, John.
They've now opened campuses outside of the Rio Grande Valley in San Antonio and Austin They're about to open campuses next year in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and El Paso, Texas. And my son's on the board, and they're going to be in Fort Worth to look at opening campuses in the Dallas-Fort Worth area in 2017 and 18.
You should be so proud of this. I mean, this is, I keep using the word extraordinary, but it is. With the schools, and so many kids are troubled. You don't know whether they're from rich families or poor families, and maybe this gives them the bonding of the animal, the insect, their life. There must be something very, very natural.
Well, and I think they will own, outside of the valley, they will probably own 2 or 3 more of these types of camps for the kids that, Fort Worth's 550 miles away, and El Paso's 800 miles. So I think that they will, as they grow and prosper, will be able to acquire camps of similar nature to really give all the kids that they have an opportunity to be outdoors and involved and learn nature and ecology and conservation.
My goodness, this is an extraordinary conversation. And I know that of course, last time we spoke, we did talk about your camp. I mean, your lot, your land, rather. But now this was something that Audrey put in my hand and said, look what we're doing. And of course, meeting the photographer, Gazansky, and all that he's doing. And so it's another world, isn't it? When you look at now what's happening in the world with politics, and there's so many negative things going on, you go to a place like this, and you're into just pure heaven.
Well, I guess I believe in the things that, like your husband, Bill. And there's a quote that I found before I started the Pro Tour of Nature Photography, and it really struck home. It says, make no small plans, for they fail to stir men's souls.
That's great. Where is that in it? That's not in this book, is it? I was looking for it.
No, it's a quote I keep up, and I can't remember who I got it from, but I keep it in a framed picture next to my computer.
I have to have that quote. I see. I have my pen. You have to say that for me again. Say it again.
It says, "Make no small plans, for they fail to stir men's souls."
I got it. But that is perfect for Bill, I must say. So he's always planning things that are like so impossible, but you're right. Well, that's lovely. I have to compliment you too on this book, the Save Camp Lula Sam's, the Save with the little plant growing out of the V. Very clever, very well done. I mean, and this whole book is very well done. You really do go to the best people to make all this happen. A lot of people are involved, too. I could see in all the...
Well, it was, except for the printing and binding, everything else, the design, the selection of the images, the processing, the writing, everything else was done by volunteers.
Well, of course, you do stir people. I must say, you have that personality that catches like a wind, and you just take people along with it. And I'm so glad that, of course, I know Audrey, your beautiful wife, for so long, and then she brought you to our life, which was super. And the two of you are you're really enjoying what you're doing, but you are making a difference. And I'm sure that you go when the kids are in their classes, and you go and you quietly sit and observe, don't you?
I love to watch the kids outdoors and watch them learning.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you, just looking in your book, the book, I don't even know if I'm going to pronounce it, Karen Agner?
It's Karen.
Oh, Karen Agner.
And
what she did?
Her family lives in Florida.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, and she lives in Washington, D.C. And she also now, after having been the senior picture editor, she leads photo tours for National Geographic and Nature Conservancy, and she also is a photographer for the Nature Conservancy.
Well, I'm looking at the two pages rather. I can't understand how she even could possibly have gotten those pictures. I mean, how long does it take for someone like that to capture that? They just sit there and wait and wait and wait?
They know exactly how to hide themselves and how to be in that right spot. It's amazing. I have to admit, it's and there's something missing in this world that we're not recognizing wildlife photographers as the last true adventurers that we have left in this. The astronauts that go into outer space are adventurers, but when it comes to going to the wild and recording it and bringing it back, nature photographers are the last group of those adventurers.
Yes, that's probably true. And we do get National Geographic. We have those books on our coffee table. And that was the first book that most people, first magazine, most kids had that taught them about places so far away.
Yep. Now we need to teach them what's in their backyard.
That's a very good point. Right, what's in their backyard. Well, you're doing a good job with it. And I just have to say, John, I'm so happy that you were available for us to talk about this, because people, here in South Florida, they see, lovely wildlife. But it's not like what you're seeing. This is really wild and it's really natural. And maybe someone here will do something like you've done. I don't know, but just.
I would love to be able to go to Florida and pay a private landowner who has his farm or ranch or whatever they call it in Florida set up for great photography. And to me the greatest thing in the world would be to have a Florida panther walk into a water hole that I could photograph. Those are those once in a lifetime things. And
well, John, I have to tell you, we'll have to have you on again, but you and Audrey have to come visit us because we live on a lake that has all this wildlife, and we'll talk about that. So thank you so much for being with us, and my love to Audrey, and we'll get you a copy of this.
Well, I couldn't do it without her, and
I know.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, John. I hope we get to see you soon.